Welcome back. I'm going to go straight to Brad because we were in the middle of a discussion about who is allowed in this country and who's not. And you were saying
the president said it tonight. I actually took it down as a note. He said, people who will love our country will come here and work hard. That's who we want. I think he might add, follow our laws, assimilate into our culture. That's what's always been the ingredient for Americans who came here, whether you were my forebears who came from Scotland or Ken's who came from Italy, is you have to come to America, assimilate into American culture, work hard, take America as your own country, leave your prior country behind. That's what it means.
Can I just say that's flat out wrong, and that's utter BS. First of all,
that's what the oath
there is
says
a difference.
For new citizens.
There is a difference between coming to this country and absorbing all of the greatness of this country and the opportunity of this country and maintaining the values that you bring with you, maintaining the dignity that you bring with you. Black folk were stripped of absolutely everything. But all we had was hope and faith. We didn't come here to assimilate. We were brought here in chains. There was no assimilation. So let's get that absolutely correct. And there also is a line between talking about immigration and being outwardly racist. And what we're doing here is we're kind of beating around the bush. Because what Donald Trump does with Somalians is utter racism. And if he did it one time, then we can excuse it. But he called these people filthy. He called them animals. He said all they do, and we get into this thing where we say now that we have to become westernized, that you have to come here and assimilate. No. You say that you want Norwegians. You say you want white South Africans. You call African countries shithole countries. You poo-poo on Haiti. Like, let's be extremely clear about what we're talking about in this administration. And I think that there is a refreshing, and people finally, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when racists were like in the closet, but now, it's out. And I'm okay with that. I know what I'm dealing with. So,
I'm not. But also, if there was an assimilation, it wouldn't be the Western culture. It would be the Native American culture, because y'all are visitors too here, if we want to be clear. But we don't talk about that. We erase them. We put them on reservations. We try and give them tribal sovereignty. And and their community also was decimated by people who came and tried to get them to assimilate. It wasn't just that we were stripped from everything. If we wanted, as Black people, to keep our culture, we were killed, we were lynched, we were beaten, our families were torn apart. Does any of those things ring true to sound like some things that might be happening now? People are being killed, families are being torn apart. There is the beauty of America used to be it as a melting pot.
Correct.
It used to be the thing where
that's
diversity.
what assimilation is. It's a melting pot.
No, assimilation and a melting pot is not the same thing.
In 1988, Jesse Jackson told you what America was. No. You want America to be this carpet. It's not. It's a quilt. Jesse Jackson literally told you what America was. It's a quilt. It's different patches that are sewn together to make a unique fabric. Yes. Like this is what his life was. That is, I don't understand how we don't understand history.
Well, look, I just to bring this back to why we're even talking about this, I think the question of what is the correct vision of this country is really part of what is up for grabs right now. And the fact of the matter is that if the American people saw it the way that Donald Trump did, I don't think we would be having this conversation. I don't think this would even be an issue. He would be popular on the issue of how he's handling immigration, and he's not. A lot of Americans are either themselves immigrants, they have ties to immigrants, they live in mixed status homes. Immigration is something that is actually deeply tied to this country. You said you're Italian. I live in New York. There's a little Italy in New York where people are still celebrating their Italian heritage, still flying Italian flags. They're proud of where they came from. They go back to their home country. They don't forget that that's where they came from.
Still speaking the language.
Again, a question of
my grandparents.
Do the American people believe in this, I think that's called this heritage American idea that some on the MAGA right want to put forward, which is this idea that if you don't tie your American identity back to the Mayflower, you're not really American.
No, the left wants to make this binary, and that's what I'm hearing here. Either you're a racist or you're for open borders, and that is not the real world, and that is not Donald Trump. He spoke favorably, as Brad noted, for hardworking people who love this country to come to this country. That's who we want to come to this country. That's who Donald Trump wants to come to this country. And it was always true and to your point, Abby, it's playing out, that the idea of enforcing immigration law is easier to support than when cameras are following around the actual enforcement of immigration law. And because we're all human beings, and these are human beings, they may be on the wrong side of the law.
But it's also common
but
sense,
you still
right?
have, well, let me just finish this one point.
Yeah.
We have this, we all have, I hope, a heart for other people. But there is also, we long ago crossed this line with millions and millions and millions of people being allowed in illegally and being given various statuses, many of them. And so how do you solve that problem? Well, you solve that problem by returning them home. And that's never going to look
I don't know
very
that
pretty.
Americans agree that you solve that problem by treating visa overstays the same way you treat somebody
I agree with
who
that.
murdered someone
I
on the
agree with
streets,
that.
Well, they are
right?
treated the
because,
same.
well, in this administration, they are. And that's part of the problem. Because let me give you another example, and I'll let you respond to it. Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, his grandfather came over to this country illegally and was ordered to be deported, did not leave, and was granted asylum in one of the waves of asylum in this country. And now here he is, and Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State. I think Americans understand that, in theory, like to your point, they approve of dealing with the immigration system. They think it's broken. But when you ask them, should you deport
we can
somebody
all
who's
agree
been
on that.
here for 20 years? Should you deport somebody who's working hard, hasn't broken any laws? They say no.
Because they understand that there's a cartoon version of immigration, which is being peddled by Donald Trump and the Republican Party. This notion that we'll take people who want to work hard, we'll take people who want to have decent lives. The vast, vast majority of immigrants, legal and illegal, are those people.
Yes.
And they always have been. And this notion that only heritage Americans have this culture, the fundamental truth about the
No one
American
has said
people.
that.
Well, or that
Some
that's
people
the-
are saying
Some
that.
people are saying
Yeah,
this.
some people
in
on
the
the right are
Republican
saying
Party.
that.
That you have to be able to trace your roots back to whatever, the Mayflower, or to some, culture of what, the 17th
I
century
mean, this
in Europe.
idea of Western
and that is
culture,
just,
you know?
Most Americans are normal. They don't have grand theories of everything. They don't have apocalyptic mythos where we are in cultural
most
conflict
Americans
with the
didn't watch
devil.
the
They're
State of the
normal
Union.
But
people.
can I ask you a question though? If you did, because when we said that people who are like going to their appointments for their immigration status, they are getting detained and deported. That is happening. There is video of that happening. You said no. But if you found out that they were, would you have a problem with that? Do you think that is how it should be working?
If you're suggesting that people who are here legally are being picked up as if they're here illegally, then yeah, I would want that fixed.
I want to answer your question
course.
very directly. There are people who are coming to their appointments who are working within the system. They have overstayed their visa. They are technically deportable. They've been adjudged deportable, and they're being detained. That is happening. I don't know how high the error rate is. I think that's a bad policy for this administration. I don't think it is helping them. I think that the president has all the credibility in the world on this issue. He ran on it. The system was broken, and Joe Biden made it worse. And he was elected to fix it. I think he can maintain that confidence by making sure that's not happening, and that he's spending all his effort on people who are violent criminals, people who have entered twice. If you've entered twice, you're a felon, and those people should be deported as well. But they have to do a good job of separating those two.
All right, I think we've come to a good place on that topic. I do want to talk about something else that President Trump spent some time on. He also used his speech to tout his economic accomplishments, but the question is, will it be enough to ease Americans' concerns about affordability? Here's what he had to say.
12 months ago, I had just inherited a nation in crisis with a stagnant economy, inflation at record levels. Gasoline, which reached a peak of over $6 a gallon, is now below $2.30 a gallon in most states. In 12 months, I secured commitments for more than $18 trillion pouring in from all over the globe. The tariffs paid for by foreign countries.
Okay, everyone. They're not paid for by foreign countries.
We're paying for them.
Americans are paying for them. It is interesting, though, that he
The
is.
gas thing was a lot too, just FYI.
Yeah, that is also true. At least it's a
So
gross
was the inflation thing.
It's a
wasn't
gross
the record
overstatement.
inflation.
It's a gross overstatement.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, I'll take
Why
all the
is the
Trump gas
president-
prices
He
over
says
all
in
the
history-
Biden ones.
Why is the president, Terry, doubling down on, especially on tariffs, a deeply unpopular policy that the Supreme Court just said was illegal?
Because he's always believed in it. He has a vision of America with belching smokestacks and factories and trade surpluses that is basically from his teenage years, like 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And that's what he's committed to. The problem is that he did it unlawfully, and he's doing it unlawfully again. These new tariffs, the 15% global tariffs, they're on balance of payments deficits. His own lawyer in the Supreme Court told the Supreme Court that would be illegal if we were using Section 122. John Sauer said that to the Supreme Court, and Trump has now done it again. So it's just a matter of time before these are illegal, and they are paid for by the American people, as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent himself let the cat out of the bag the other day when somebody asked him about how would a refund of all these, he says, the American people aren't going to see that money. Admitting we're paying.
I mean, you've seen the studies come out. I think that the average American has paid $1,000 because of these tariffs. I mean, the fact is, you talked about the border and that Donald Trump was hired to fix the border. I mean, he was also hired to fix the economy. And I love this because one of the things Republicans have done since I've been born, I was born in 1984, but Republicans always tout themselves as being the strongest on the economy. But what we've seen them do, president after president after president, is actually raise the deficit. What we've seen them do is have things that cause inflation. I mean, the last time we had a balanced budget in this country was William Jefferson Clinton, right? That was the last
The
time.
Republican Congress.
Who was the president?
The Republican Congress.
Okay, a Republican Congress. You're right. So imagine what you have now. You have a Republican Congress, a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican president.
And
balance.
And the president, listen, if you listen to this speech, you would not be blamed for thinking that the policy was tariff and spend, because the revenue raising was going to be coming from tariffs, which are coming from Americans. Then he's talking about putting $1,000 in Americans' 401k plans. We don't know where that money is coming from. He's touting his Trump accounts for Americans. He's touting all kinds of things that will cost money, but not really explaining how that's fiscally responsible or where the money is going to come from, or even how he's going to get Congress to do it.
I love these questions that only arise when there's a Republican president. I mean,
We'll get it from the
listen.
student loan
This
I'll
is not
only
a guy
say
who
that
ran on
because,
balancing
listen,
the budget.
he,
I wish he
because
would,
to your
but-
point, I mean, he is a Republican, right? I mean, is this not the mantra of Republicans that Democrats are fiscally irresponsible, they just want to spend? Trump is spending, and he is also taxing, because tariffs are a tax.
And one of the things he says about the tariffs is that they are knocking down the deficit. Scott Bessent talks about this quite a bit as well.
They're not.
Good.
Where?
That's
Point
a
to
tax
how.
increase on us.
How? So tell me how.
Well, look, I mean,
Because
economics-
they'd be borrowing more
lower
money
than projected.
to this is
lower-
on
the impact
closing
on
revenue
the
gap.
impact on the deficit is very small.
No, it
and it'll
isn't.
be even.
No.
Yes, it is. It is
It just
very
isn't.
small.
If I was
and it'll be even smaller given that they have to curtail some of the tariffs. But actually, to your point, I mean, Trump said he said that he wants tariffs to replace the income tax,
Right,
which
he
is
would
not.
like that.
He would like that. That is imaginary math. That is not a real thing. How are you comfortable with the president wanting a policy that is based on something that is fiscally impossible?
So I started as one of those free trade Republicans that thought there shouldn't be, we should, let anybody do anything. And then I traveled around Virginia and saw the consequences of that, including the wipeout of the entire southern tier of Virginia and a good part of the western tier of Virginia. And Donald Trump's efforts to return balance in fairness to trade is something that I think Americans support. And it's something we're seeing in the drug price. One of his accomplishments that he touted is to stop Americans from subsidizing the rest of the world's lower drug prices. And that's been a success. And I think that he believes, and I think a lot of us believe, that we can move in that direction on trade more generally, and tariffs are a part of that discussion.
I actually agree with you, Ken. I think that if there is one silver lining from the president's address tonight, I think that there is bipartisan support. And we saw it. We saw the $30 cap that came under Democrats on insulin prices. We saw the Republican Congress mess with that. But we do believe, I mean, you have Mark Cuban and Donald Trump singing from the same sheet of music on lowering pharmaceutical drug prices. I think that those type of things, I wish that you could have a gang of 8 to get in a room, fortify this, and talk about those things. Yeah. But also, you have those things which are what America should be, how we should legislate, get in a room, fix that problem. We agree on those things. And then you have this fantasy world, because I do believe, Ken, and Brad, that you guys still are waiting on your Doge checks to come. I don't know if you remember that, but the same president promised you a $1,000 Doge check from the savings that Elon Musk was going to provide.
And instead, more Americans paid $1,000.
You actually ended up paying $1,000.
That was the good. That's what we call the okie doke. But
everybody in America who pays taxes, their paycheck this February is better than it would have been if Democrats had been in charge. Every Democrat wanted to raise taxes on every taxpayer in America. They all voted for it, every one of them. Whether you take the standard deduction, whether it's your income at the very lowest bracket, every Democrat was going to have those taxes go up last month. Donald Trump talked about that tonight. He hasn't talked about that much this year. It's really one of his 2 signature accomplishments. And I thought one of the outcomes tonight that was most important was he talked about some of these things that he has done. Auto loan deductibility. That's a first-time thing he's done. What he did with prescription drugs through direct buying. That's a thing that he hasn't talked about a lot. I think maybe him spending more time talking about why he's doing things and who the American people are, who are the heroes, I think that was one of the upshots tonight.
Can I say
the tax bill being number 1?
3 things. 1, maybe their checks will look better, but they have to then go spend it on the health care that is more expensive now first.
You mean unsubsidized?
We try to run down the facts and tell people that it's better. It doesn't work. If people don't feel it's better, they don't believe it's better. They don't agree with it.
We tried that with Joe Biden.
We tried it. I'm giving you free advice. It doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't work. If I was advising Donald Trump on the tariff thing, it is Democrats support and have supported tariffs in the past, but I would take that Supreme Court decision as a win and back off on the policy, at least until midterms if I was advising him, and say it's not my fault. I'm trying to do it. It's not where blame the court, but his unwillingness to just take his foot off the pedal is going to drive him right off the ledge.
Well, okay, to that very point, let me just play this because it's kind of apropos of what you're talking about. Trump basically made the argument today that all that's happening right now is just straight up winning for the American people. Listen.
Our country is winning again. In fact, we're winning so much that we really don't know what to do about it. People are asking me, please, 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 Mr. President, we're winning too much. We can't take it anymore. We're not used to winning in our country. Until you came along, we're just always losing, but now we're winning too much. And I say, no, 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 you're going to win again. You're going to win big. You're going to win bigger than ever.
Okay, I don't know what polls he's looking at, but that's not what the ones that I've seen say.
Well, I mean, he's a salesman, and this that was a sales pitch to credit my administration with making everything great. And of course it's not, right? And not only we aren't winning at home, but that winning the way he wants to do it has alienated us and weakened our power and our alliances probably permanently. And listen to the issues we're talking about here. We're talking about free trade. We're talking about immigration. We're talking about all these things that the Congress should be dealing with, right? We're talking about the cost of the government. These are things that we have a broken Congress. It won't do anything. And his approach is chaotic and insane.
Terry, wait a minute. The Congress is broken because Democrats will not allow anything to move on the floor of the Senate.
Mitch McConnell said, my job is to make Barack Obama a one-term president.
But let's assign blame where it goes. If you had 7 Democrats who were willing to vote for things they campaigned on.
So you don't want me, but you have
Let's go back.
Hold on, Brad. I actually think that's a bit of a cop-out because the president isn't even going to Congress on some of this stuff. It'd be one thing if he said, I want Congress to do all of these things. He's saying, I'm not even going to bother going to them on it. And the question I have for you is, is that part of the problem? It almost feels to me like the American people see through some of this stuff. They don't trust the executive orders. They know they're temporary. They also see loopholes the size of a truck
Well, they just
when it
passed-
comes to some of these policies. That deductibility on car interest only applies, as the president said, to
American cars.
American-made cars.
Is that a bad thing?
No, I'm just pointing out.
It's not
that,
I drive a Ford truck.
Listen,
That sounds good.
I'm just pointing out that it doesn't apply to everyone, right? The no taxes on Social Security that he keeps claiming is not no taxes on Social Security. It's a $6,000 deduction. A majority of Social Security recipients are going to be paying taxes. No taxes on tips. There are limits to it. So people are seeing the limits of what Trump claims to be doing and how it's not actually impacting them. And I think that, don't you think it's part of the problem is that he's not even going to Congress and saying, let's make
those
this
things came through
real.
Congress.
Let's
that you
make
just
this
mentioned.
permanent.
All those things came through Congress, and I think I would call those progress. Much like when Joe Biden tariffed electric cars from China and preferenced those. I mean, Democrats thought that was progress. There's a housing bill that went through the U.S. House of Representatives, 390-9. We don't talk much about things that are bipartisan. Right. That's going to go to the Senate and die because Chuck Schumer's not going to let it come to the floor. And so there are opportunities for us to work together. There are opportunities. And the U.S. House is, frankly, with a one-seat majority, Mike Johnson's doing a hell of a job actually moving anything through. It's hard to get Republicans to approve the journal on a one-seat majority, for God's sake. So I think we have to assess blame where it is. I agree with you that Donald Trump should go to the Congress and wheel more. He didn't have a whole lot of luck that first term. And frankly, you saw tonight when Democrats won't stand up for heroes in the gallery, you have to accept that maybe he would agree they're not going to help him with
I don't know what else
I don't know that he really needs
want.
them.
And this is going to be the problem. This is going to be the problem. That argument, I think, is going to fail in November because you ask the American people to give you the House and the Senate to fix the problems that Joe Biden gave this country. Then the American people gave you the House and the Senate to fix the problems that Joe Biden did. And now you're saying it's still Democrats' fault.
You want to get rid of the filibuster? Is that what you're telling me? You'd like to drop it? Are you going to take? Do you think the American people are ignorant that they don't know?
No, I don't think they're ignorant at all.
There's also leadership is an
smarter
option.
than that.
Leadership is an option, right?
But leadership is an option, and I think that's my point. I think that the American public is tired of this act that we call showmanship. I think that, or salesman, as you called it. That's right. Because when you get up there and you hear that 15, 20-second clip of just an old guy talking about
winning.
We're great, we're winning. Oh my God, we're winning. Like, first of all,
he does that to make you crazy.
No, he does it because he's mediocre. Like, he does it because he doesn't have the ability to put words together.
I laughed. But it didn't make me crazy. It made me actually got a good laugh that night.
Where's the leadership? Is there a role for Trump to be a leader in this moment?
Yes, but there's a role for a lot of people to be leaders.
And bring people to his side. That's what politics is, right?
But it's hard to bring people to your side when you make fun of them in their face. Like, that's really hard. If you say negative things about me, I'm not coming to your house for dinner because I don't like you and you probably don't like me. And that is what Trump did a lot tonight. What I will say, though, is I hear you, Brad. It's Democrats' fault. We need 7 votes. Then go get them. Work, negotiate, compromise. When we did not have enough votes for when Biden was in office, because at one point we had a trifecta too, Biden had to work. He had to go get votes. He had to do it. It didn't always work. The problem is that we are in such a partisan time. And I'm going to be honest, in my perspective, like, y'all started this fight. You started it when, I mean it most recently, you started it when Mitch McConnell wouldn't even give Barack Obama his rightfully so.
A vote.
No, wait a minute.
So a vote. And then he did the exact same thing on the Supreme Court. So it's just like, come on, guys.
Advise and consent. Barack Obama should have asked Mitch McConnell who he could confirm and then sent that nominee.
Ken,
he's the president.
To Ashley's,
he nominated Merrick Garland.
Ken, to Ashley's point,
he nominated a Republican.
Are Republicans just being lazy about this?
About what?
About
governing.
Yeah, they're in charge. They've got all 3 branches, all 3, 2 chambers of the House and the Senate, and the presidency. If you don't have the votes, what you have to do is you have to make deals with the other side in order to get a deal. Is it just laziness, partisanship, that whatever it is, that they are not willing to do that on some of these tough issues that would make a difference for Americans?
No, I think they're quite willing to do it. And, we're obviously talking about Donald Trump because he gave the State of the Union tonight, but virtually every Democrat in the House put out an email fundraising tonight calling Donald Trump every name you just complained about, and that's all they ever do. They will not be seen being constructive with him. They will not do it.
All you need is a few. You don't need the whole House. You don't need all Democrats
you are right
in the House
about that.
or in the Senate.
You're right about that in both chambers, and that's very true. Bakari earlier commented on kind of civility and working together and compromise, and then the partisanship that exists. I think it is a simple matter of human nature that when you have the kind of behavior Ashley was describing by both parties,
yeah,
then you make it a whole lot harder to actually come together and do the 390 to 9 votes and make those stick and go all the way through the process.
Respectfully, I'm sorry. I didn't let you.
No, that's okay. And look, Donald Trump is pure pugilist. He's always on the front foot. He's always going to say we're winning, and he has made deals with Democrats, both first term and second.
Can I just point out one of the things that you're saying, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, and this is going to make Donald Trump's head explode. I hope he's watching this. It points to the fact that shows you that Barack Obama was just a far superior governor and leader and executive than Donald Trump could ever be. You take somebody who in 2010, for example, had a very similar setup that we have now, and he was able to transform our entire healthcare system. Whether or not you agree with it or disagree, I know how you feel about it, Ken. You filed the first lawsuit against it. Yes. You guys still haven't fixed healthcare in this country or had an idea how to fix it.
You all fixed it like a dog.
But my point is, he was able to go in and actually lead and be transformative. Like asking Donald Trump to do anything comparable.
He had 60 senators.
Asking Donald Trump to do anything comparable.
He had 60.
I know he had 60, but I mean, he still had to make sure.
He didn't sell it.
He did have to sell it.
He didn't get a single Republican vote for it.
Not one.
If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your plan,
So did he lie or did he not?
It was called the lie of the year. PolitiFact called it the lie of the year.
But what Barack Obama had was an actual mandate. What you all have is you have to figure out how to govern. And after the 2024 election, y'all said you had a mandate. Well, the facts and the math in the Senate, you don't. So figure out how to work with your Democratic colleagues and get some stuff done.
I have a question for you. So, and it was in the speech tonight.
Yes.
The president tonight said that what we need to do is not send money to big insurance companies, the Obamacare subsidies, and send it straight to the people, the patients who need them. Democrats used to be against insurance companies. They thought it was corporate welfare. Is that a place where Donald Trump could get 7 Democrats in the Senate? Instead of doing the ACA subsidies,
how are you going to get the money
you're going to have to, first
are you going to send it to the states?
You're going to have to.
I mean, how does that work?
No,
you're going to have to open up the ACA, the sacred cow. You're going to have to open it up and say, maybe we didn't do it right under Barack Obama. Maybe we got the insurance companies too much profit. Let's lower the medical loss ratio and send this money as vouchers, perhaps, or discounts straight to the consumer.
I mean, I think you could. I definitely think you could have a conversation about that. But the problem that we have here is what you all have done to Medicaid cuts, what you all have done to the cuts on rural health care centers, what you all have done to these cuts around. I mean, so you're saying open up the sacred cow, and then you have Democrats that are like, we don't trust you.
That's right.
Because the one big beautiful bill has people out here whose costs are going up and whose access has gone down. So if this is all we're doing, then yes, Mike Johnson, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, get in a room and say, look, I don't believe that insurance companies should be making the profits off the backs of everyday Americans. You and I agree on that. How do we fix that problem? Let's talk about that directly. But the last time we did this in the one big beautiful bill, you cost the American public, both of you guys. And Americans remember that. And we're not going down that path again.
It's so interesting to come full circle on this healthcare topic, because I remember in the Obamacare discussions, Republicans were the ones who were trying to protect healthcare companies, which is why Democrats ended up with the bill that they did. But we'll have to leave that discussion there. Next for us, President Trump says Democrats only win elections because they cheat, and he cites overwhelming public support to get voter ID laws passed. So how do Democrats respond? We'll debate.